Thank you. Good morning. I would invite you all to take a moment and think about something that not everybody knows about you. So if you've ever played the game Two Truths and a Lie, this would be the truth you choose because everyone's going to think it's a lie. As an example, something that not everybody knows about you. So, one thing that not everybody knows about me is that I was, my junior year, the women's foil Pac-10 champion at Stanford. There you go. Greet your neighbor, please. Surprise them with something that not everybody knows about you. Aren't we full of surprises, people? Aren't we full of surprises? And good to remember to be surprised. I am Vanessa Southern. If ever you're in a sword fight, you can throw me a weapon and we'll see if I remember anything. I'm so happy to be leading worship today with Akane, who is our song leader and our soloist, whose name means the color of the sunset. That was one of the surprises. Isn't that beautiful? And to Bill Gans, who knew, was also an undergraduate at Stanford. Yeah, if we had a secret handshake, we would have exchanged it. Amanda Chapman, whose surprise I did not yet find out, but plan to. And of course, Reiko Odelaine. That was so extraordinary, the pieces that you played in the prelude this morning. And worship is made possible because of the incredible AV staff we have. Andrew from Desired Effect, it's wonderful to have you back with us while Jonathan is on well-deserved vacation, and Eric Shackelford, it's great to have you running camera, and Eric's going to help us with some of the song leading today too, to our ushers, to Angelo and Linda and Dan, and Amanda and Deborah, who make our coffee hour more environmentally friendly and welcoming. Increasingly, I think a lot of people just come for coffee hour, which is great, and come early, and maybe do it twice. And to so many other people, to all our childcare folks, to Matthias, and to Kelvin, and to William, who prepared the building, made the coffee, lit the candles, and so much else. Like Heraclitus's river, this community each week is never exactly the same when you step into it. So thank you all for being part of the river that runs through and has for 175 years through this place, this First Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco, on this morning. You may have noticed, if you're a regular, if you're not a regular, maybe it didn't seem worthy of note that the order of service is minimal. We human beings, we love and need and get bored of the ritual and habits in our lives, don't we? It comforts us, it allows us, a lot of them allow us to sort of sink deeper into our lives in a lot of ways, and they also can help us fall into the patterns of sleepwalking or even stasis. And so it is that many teachers and prophets throughout human history have commanded us to stay awake and tried to help us find practices that helped us to do so, so that we could continually wake to the essence of things and what presented in the moment. And today we're talking about one way of inviting ourselves into that state of awakeness, of mind, the phrase beginner's mind that comes out of Zen Buddhism. I am not a Zen practitioner. I feel the need to say that up front. So we will be informed by some of the essential teachings as I understand them, but we're also going to hold that phrase somewhat lightly as I use it because I'm not a trained practitioner in Zen Buddhism, and we'll bring our creative imaginations to how we hold it and how we use it in the invitation of it this week, this day, this week, and ahead. The gifts, the practice of beginner's mind. I hope the not knowing of what comes next exactly this Sunday, though much of it will be familiar, will allow you to lean in to this invitation of radical openness and curiosity and presence. And so, we worship together. We will begin with our meditation on breathing, and Akane is gonna, it's in your teal hymn. Look, if you just can't stand not to have the security blanket, it's 1009, or if you're brand new. But the words are simple. Many of us have sung it before. Akane is gonna lead us through, and other people with strong voices can join in. Please rise, as you're able, body, certainly in spirit.
When I bless in, I bless in peace. When I bless out, I bless
Let's join in, sing it through a couple
out.
times. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. Feel free to join the high part or the low drone if you know it. I breathe in peace when I breathe out. I breathe out love when I breathe in.
I breathe out, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud. When I breathe.
Thank you.
So we're doing a different chalice lighting today. Zen Master Suzuki Roshi used the imagery of fire, bonfires, and lamps to explain total commitment and egoless practice. He wrote, and if you wish you can repeat after me, "Do things with your whole body and mind.
Do things with your whole body and mind.
Like a good bonfire,
Like a good bonfire.
leaving no trace or remainder of yourself."
Leaving no trace or remainder of yourself.
With these words, we light our chalice this morning.
Among the rituals that we do each week is the saying of a covenant, promises that we say to each other that define how we are and who we are together, because we are a faith tradition not bound by a creed or a set of dogmas. Some of you say these words each week. Let me ask you some questions about them. What is the spirit of this church? Love is the spirit of this church. What is our prayer? Service is our prayer. Our great covenant is to dwell together in peace. To speak what in freedom? The truth. To speak the truth in freedom. And finally, to help one another. If you know the words, let's say them together. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak the truth in freedom, and to help one another. I invite you to rise as you're able in body and spirit as we sing our doxology. This might be a little more challenging. In your gray hymnal, 382 and 381, the words exist.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue.
there are many writings and writers influenced by Zen Buddhism. Zen koans, I think many of you have heard of, are those challenging, often contradictory seeming sentences. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Designed to break us out of and beyond our traditional constraints and thinking. They are part of the Ritara Zen school. There are also poets who are influenced by the Zen tradition, the Soto Zen tradition, which is about a mindfulness and an invitation into a depth in the everyday, the poetry, the poems of these writers. The transportative everyday influenced Asian writers, it's influenced Western writers. One such writer was Santoko Taneda, a Japanese poet who lived from 1880 to 1940 during the early Showa period. He is considered one of the leading figures in free-form haiku poetry in Japan. He lived a life of a commitment to poverty, an itinerant, wandering life, and he found in this life, in its solitude, much spiritual liberation. So we share and sit with this morning 4 of his poems.
Silently, I put on today's straw sandals.
The beauty of the sunset shows grief. Old age.
No grief for old age. No grief for old age.
Let's read that one again, can we? Just so everyone can hear it.
Yeah, she said louder.
Oh, so the beauty of the sunset shows no grief for old age.
The breeze from the mountains in the wind bell makes me want to live.
There is nothing else I can do. I walk on and on.
Thank you. This week, Tuesday afternoon, a magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck Japan's southern Kumamoto prefecture, with an epicenter around 12 miles south of Kumamoto City. It was buried in our news this week. Such was the character of this week for us. It is the city near which Akane's mother lives. Reiko has family nearby. Their loved ones are fine. But to date, 34 people, at least last I checked, had lost their lives, and thousands of others were displaced, and tens of thousands were without water and electricity. Our offering will be taken for the Kumamoto prefecture when we find a reliable venue for our gift. And meanwhile, we hold the people of Japan, and we hold all people who suffer in so many places in our world right now, in Iraq, in Palestine, or crossing from Morocco to Spain, those in Sudan. We hold so many in our thoughts and in our prayers. In the spirit, our offering this morning will be given and gratefully received. Beginner's mind, in the Soto Zen tradition, is a practice in meditation, facilitated in meditation. With guidance from a Zen community, I invite us into a practice briefly this morning. Instead of sitting in meditation and thinking you know what your breath will be like, or what the present moment in front of you will be like, you pay attention. See it with fresh eyes. Drop your preconceived ideas and just look clearly at what's in front of you. A daily practice is extremely useful in developing this beginner's mind. And so, we enter this brief time of meditation, making sure we sit comfortably and upright in a quiet place. Pay attention to your body. Then your breath. Trying to see them clearly and freshly. When you notice yourself having preconceived ideas, wandering from the present moment, thinking you know how it will be, just notice that. See if you can drop the ideas and thoughts and fantasies and stories that are filling up in your head. Empty yourself so you can see what's actually in front of you. See what your breath is actually like right now, instead of what you think it will be or what you're thinking about. And so we hold silence together. or the end of our silence. I invite us into a practice of grieving and honoring. During this time, if you've lost someone close to you in the past year, or perhaps if this is an anniversary of loss, if you wish, I invite you to place a hand on your heart in witness to that loss. And for everyone, if there's someone who's suffering, who's on your heart today, you can hold them in the intention in this moment that they find peace and healing and relief from their suffering. May we all find peace, healing, and relief from our suffering. Thank you, Akane. Thank you, Bill. There are two Suzukis who played major but very different roles in bringing Zen Buddhism to the United States. There was the scholar and translator D.T. Suzuki, whose book, An Introduction to Zen Buddhism, many of you, I'm sure, have read, that early primer on the philosophy and the cultural framework of Zen. That Suzuki was a friend and a collaborator of Jung's and also influenced poets, a lot of them from the Beat generation, like Allen Ginsberg and Gary Snyder and Jack Kerouac, and through them influenced American culture. The second is Shunryu Suzuki, or Suzuki Roshi, the Soto Zen priest and meditation teacher who was the founder of the San Francisco Zen Center and of the Tassajara Zen Meditation Center, which is the first Buddhist monastery outside of Asia. Suzuki Roshi was a practitioner of Zen and authored Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, a collection edited of his talks, and still also considered an essential guide to the practice of Zazen, Zen meditation practice. It was Shunryu Suzuki who taught people to practice, who brought to the West this idea of the Zen beginner's mind. By the way, a fun fact, for your dinner parties this week, his teacher, he joined a monastery very young. His father was a priest, his mother was the daughter of the priest. His master nicknamed him Crooked Cucumber for his forgetful and unpredictable nature. A good reminder, I think, to us that we can be teachers and leaders even if we are crooked cucumbers in the world. As for beginner's mind, for sure, similar ideas had existed in the West, even in religious circles, and maybe that actually made it easier to integrate these new teachings. Jesus is often quoted in a passage in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, when he's asked by the disciples, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And he calls a child forward among them. And when he does so, he says, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And Jesus, in that passage, goes on to unpack what he means by this, but actually he really only says directly that we need to be humble like a child. Much of what it means to be like a little child is left to our imagination in this sacred text. And I have to say, humility wouldn't be the word I would always use for children. I'll have to go back to the Aramaic or whatever original language it was. I mean, children can be strangely, hilariously, delusionally confident. But openness would be a word I would use. The easy ability to practice wonder, the knowing of how much you don't know, and the wild curiosity to know more, to risk on discovery, the easy willingness and ability to be surprised. These feel like, in my light, some of the spiritual gifts of the child, and of good reason to instruct your followers to fight, to work, to be, to stay in some necessary ways, like children. But it's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it, what I just said, to work to be more like a child, to fight to stay like a little child. I say it because I think it highlights the fact that it takes effort, or at the very least, our intention to stay connected throughout our lives to this early posture we had so naturally toward life, especially as life and its experiences and all they bring with them start to pile up inside us. So it may not be entirely the same as what Suzuki Roshi is writing about, but it does feel similar when he writes and talks about how one of the greatest dangers in life is to become what many would say is the opposite of a beginner, an expert. How he warns specifically about the danger of thinking oneself an expert, of identifying in one's ego as one. Perhaps the most famous and oft-requoted line in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, speaks to this when he says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few. Suzuki names in that sentence one of the things that often happens and accompanies experience and expertise, but not one we often think about when we celebrate and hold up expertise as a goal, as an achievement. I think we know what he is describing. Maybe we have occasionally been the person he describes. Suzuki means the person who's been around the block, at least this is the way I read it, so many times that they know what the outcomes of a certain strategy or situation will be. That can include what that kind of person will do, or how some romantic prospect will fare before the romance has even had a chance to begin, or the preacher, or the boss, or the naysaying coworker who says, we've done it that way before, it never works. Who knows for sure that that intervention won't work? They say that, we do it. Though the world is so multifaceted, and people, we are so dynamic, and circumstances are so varied, and attempts so different and nuanced when executed on, and luck and synergy are so impossible to quantify or predict that no one can entirely know what the outcomes will be. That I know with expert certainty. Sorry. That too we hold lightly. I personally have thought services that my colleagues were going to lead from their descriptions were going to be complete disasters, and people talked about those services after they happened for years. I've known friendships that blossomed across big differences or hardship, harebrained ideas that my NBA friends still wish they'd invested in, but laughed at. Things I tried once that worked on the second or third time for reasons I will never know. Experience is so valuable. Wisdom is such a beautiful, iconic goal of life. And we are a culture that undersells our elders in ways that are part of our undoing. And one thing the elders often know, the truly wise ones, is how often life can surprise you. Do you know that there's even a name for our human knowledge base to be something that is responsible for our weakness in problem solving? The Einstellung effect. Anyone heard of the Einstellung effect? No. Oh, wow, one person, you get a prize. I don't know what it is, Tom Pierre. But you're German, maybe it's more spoken about in Germany. Anyway, it's a term that's coined by Abraham and Edith Lutyens, who were a married couple. He was a Gestalt therapist, and she was a mathematician. And they did these famous, to some, water jar experiments in which they asked people to solve a few problems involving, I think, 3 water jars, as I remember, for which a certain approach worked best to get the right answer. But when the couple running the experiment substituted a new problem, maybe also with water jars, they found that the majority of people automatically slipped into the problem-solving method that had worked with the earlier challenges, even though that approach was neither the most efficient nor the best to actually get the right solution to the new challenge. What they pointed out in their ongoing studies of this pattern is again and again what worked or was true in the past, if you and I weren't conscious and intentional, is what the majority of us would default to. That we tend to want to see in front of us a version of what we have seen before. even when what is in front of us is markedly different, it turns out. And all the ways that this pattern sets us up for failure, for misjudging, for missing possibilities, solutions. In Suzuki's book, he says repeatedly, the person who thinks they have achieved enlightenment, the expert in Zen, is the one who most certainly has not. And in Japan, beginner's mind gets discussed and incorporated as part of an approach to many things, to martial arts, to calligraphy, to corporate life. The beginner's mind, to become like a child, is this orientation of mind and heart and spirit that works intentionally to hold any sense of ourselves as having arrived, as experts, as knowing, hold it lightly, and with real skepticism and awareness for how it can trip us up. And there's more than this, so much more than this, also for Suzuki in this idea. I don't entirely have a grasp of it, which is understandable. But for him, the beginner's mind is also a posture that's about opening to our true identity, the way to know our true selves, to be aware of each moment without judgment or ego is somehow to know or open the way to be connected to what is actually most essential that we are and that we participate in the world. And all else trips us up. I don't know or grasp more than that sense of it, but I hear the call and the justifiable reasons for trying to cultivate this beginner's mind approach to life and wonder and what that might mean, possibilities it would open up. And of course, anyone who's interested, it turns out there is an amazing Zen temple that I've driven by but didn't know was a Soto Zen temple on Laguna, just a few blocks from here, and they have times for practice, and you can watch a video in preparation. In a lecture on October 16, 1965, here in the United States, Suzuki Roshi said the following. He said, so Dojin Zenji always emphasized beginner's mind. We should always remain in beginner's mind. It means our experience should always be refreshed and renewed. It means always have joy in discovering something, the same joy of children in discovering something new. This kind of experience is not possible to attain just by training, through which you expect some result. So you do it in his invitation as a posture, but not hoping for some specific result or mastery, just as a way of being in the world. That posture that was present in the haiku poetry of Taneda that we read, if you remember it. Just letting the present be what it is, not sleepwalking. I bet you all have practices that you do because it opens you to that way of being. It's such an urge, such a craving, such a hunger we have to be open and surprised and present deeply. So we find our ways to do it. I bet you have yours. And I wonder where we each have learned the importance, too, that he talks about of not bringing judgment, trying to set aside preconceived knowing in a moment. I think for most of us who try to be people who build wholeness in the world, we try to notice our prejudices, positive and negative, so that we can set them aside, just like we do when ideas come to us in meditation. Notice them, but set them aside. And we study things like prejudice and bias because we want to be more conscious of when they show up as knowledge and set them aside. But what other ways can we set aside judgment? It's fun to think about, I think, all of the applications of this. I want to give you a really silly one to also lighten the sense of what it might mean. My family and I stumbled into a practice of it while we were on vacation. When we are on vacation, we sometimes do what, for some reason, we never do when we're not on vacation, which is sleep in. No, I'm just kidding. Which is to do puzzles. I think because so many vacation houses are filled with puzzles. So we bought a puzzle, and my daughter pointed out, when it got kind of complicated, how one of the skills and practices of puzzling is that you have to stop yourself from getting too attached to knowing what one piece is. Does this ring a bell for any of you? How you have to force yourself to see it as something that could be something other than what you initially think it is. So, for example, the piece that you are absolutely sure is a tree with leaves, but maddeningly you can find nowhere in the part of the puzzle that's a forest where it fits, actually can turn out to be, on its side, the slat of a fence with a bush growing up against it. And the hardest part is you have to open yourself to what you might not be seeing and stay open to it. So how do we look for the places to set prejudice and knowing aside? And in that vein, my friends, I want to ask you where maybe you might need to invite beginner's mind to turn and look at yourself. I think we can think that we know ourselves, but sometimes that can close off possibilities too. If we think we're so sure we know ourselves in some way, can we test that hypothesis? Like the brilliant physicist I knew who invited us over for a party only to show off the belly dancing she had taken up, and who said that at middle age she got a sense she was reinforcing a very narrow sense of who she could be in the world and how she could inhabit her body. And so she wanted to surprise herself and surprised us too. I have found that kind of perspective particularly useful in places where I feel bound up or stuck, to wonder how I might be in that place in my life, in a relationship, different than the way I know myself to be. Look at that place of stuckness differently. Can we hold it with wonder? Can we come at it from a different angle? If we have been deathly serious, can we be playful with it? If we have been leading with anger, can we try being vulnerable and naming what hurts or scares us? And in all of how we live, the invitation to be open to surprise, to look for it, to set aside all the safe harbors of what we think we know that are not quite as safe as we think they are, except that we know them, we're used to them, who we think we are, who others are, what are our possibilities, what are the world's possibilities, and to hold more lightly all we think is fixed. To risk that. In that passage in Matthew that I talked about earlier, when he asked, disciples asked, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus invites the child forward and speaks to the importance of becoming like a child, of humility. Jesus actually says one other thing to his disciples. He tells them not to be barriers in the way of children coming among them. The Bible is mostly metaphor and analogy. It's not literal. I mean, fundamentalism exists among conservative Christian fundamentalists and progressive liberal fundamentalists who all want to read, both of them want to read the Bible literally, but I don't believe, and early Christians did not read the Bible that way. It was taken more metaphorically. And if so, I wonder perhaps if what Jesus or the author of the gospel is saying in that moment is, can we please keep the way open for that part of ourselves, the childlike part, humble and open, to dwell among us, within us. The part that Suzuki tells us leads us to see so much more of what is most true about ourselves and each other, and so much more of what is possible. Suzuki says one more thing I want to mention about the beginner's mind. He says that when we connect and we're in the flow of it, we're connected to our essential being, to that which we belong. To remember that is to enter into this practice not just to lose what we think we know, but to open ourselves to the discovery of deeper kinds of knowing. So may the beginner's mind, my friends, its cultivation, making no barriers to its presence in us and among us, be an invitation to growth and wisdom and surrender and wondering and surprise and possibility. May all of that dwell among us. Blessings. And in the spirit of this morning, we are going to close with a hymn that will be a surprise to you, but that some of you know. You can look at it in the order of service, but you do not need to, because it is a hymn where we substitute a word, and I, Akane, will sing it, and I will hold up the words. It is also, that we're substituting, it is also a hymn that is about letting what wants to emerge out of us in a moment emerge. It's when the Spirit says do. Please rise in body, certainly in spirit, as we sing this together. Oh, you've got, oh, good.
You
Got to do what the Spirit says do.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. Spirit says do. Spirit says do. Spirit says do. Spirit sends love. 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 You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout so loud. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. Spirit said 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 shout. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to oh Lord, you got to do since the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
Please be seated. Thank you, Connie. That was great. Tech, high tech.
That's a hard act to follow. We're winding down our time together to welcome the opportunity to let our beginner minds settle and absorb all that's been offered in today's worship service. If you're done, I just have a few announcements. If you're new here and what you've encountered intrigues you, 2 opportunities to explore further are coming up. One of which is that next week, Reverend Laura Shenham and Emma Wakeling will be leading a new UU class from 1 to 3 in the chapel, and the other of which Judith Stoddard will tell us about.
I'm here to invite you to a more casual conversation today, newcomer orientation at 12:30 in the fireside room. If you're here for the first time, or maybe you've been coming for a while, but you're interested in learning a little bit more about Unitarian Universalism or this congregation in particular, it's a chance to chat with some other newcomers and also some longtime members and ask questions. It's the fireside room's on the other side of the courtyard. You can ask anybody with a name tag. You could pick up coffee on the way there. Hope to see you later.
And if you just have to have something to do right this minute to put your values into practice, head right out to the UU The Vote table in the hallway and pick up some postcards. I think right now they're going to North Carolina to help bring out the vote. Or you can go to the Good Trouble table and pick something that speaks to you and that you can do quickly. Now, we end our time together in worship by extinguishing the chalice. Maybe. But we carry its light of truth, warmth, the warmth of love, and fire of commitment until we come back together again.
I invite us to rise as we're able, body and spirit, join hands. Be present to the pulse of the hand in front of you, to your side. And now, in our comings and our goings, may the light of love shine upon us out from within us, be gracious unto us and grant us peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice, awake, and be glad in it. Amen.